A year after our divorce, she sent me a message. Just 5 words. "We need to talk. Urgent." My heart stopped. Why now? After all this time? I almost ignored it, almost. But something in her tone, something familiar, pulled me in. I typed back, "Another time." And instantly, I regretted it. That single choice changed everything. Because what she was about to reveal was bigger than betrayal. Bigger than lies. Bigger than anything I could imagine. She didn't cheat. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even about us. It was about someone I trusted, someone I thought was my friend, someone quietly manipulating my life for months. Every fight, every silence, every small misunderstanding suddenly made sense. It wasn't random. It was orchestrated. By the time she finally spoke, the damage was already done. And the question now, the question I can't stop thinking about, is this: what if the person you trust most is the one destroying everything behind your back? The message arrived at 11:43 p.m., glowing against the ceiling like a warning I wasn't ready to read. I had just turned off the lights and settled into that fragile quiet that only comes when the day finally releases you. Then my phone vibrated on the nightstand, sharp and sudden in the dark. I almost ignored it. Late night notifications usually mean nothing good, and I had trained myself to protect my peace. But something about the rhythm of that vibration pulled my hand toward the screen. Her name appeared after a full year of silence. No birthdays, no accidental texts, no closure. Just distance that I forced myself to accept as the final chapter. And then 5 words that cracked open everything. "We need to talk. Urgent." My chest tightened in a slow, heavy way, like my body remembered something my mind tried to forget. I stared at her name longer than pride should allow. Divorce teaches you how to pretend indifference, but memory doesn't obey those rules. My fingers hovered over the keyboard while my thoughts collided. Fear, curiosity, anger, confusion, all wrestling at once. I didn't want to step back into that emotional maze. I didn't want old wounds reopening, so I chose the safest response I could find. Calm. Distant. Defensive. I typed, "Another time." I hit send before my courage faded. The screen went dark, but the silence in the room felt louder than before. Sleep never came after that. My mind replayed our marriage like evidence being re-examined under a harsh light. The last months before the divorce suddenly felt closer than ever. Her distant eyes at dinner. The way conversations kept ending in unfinished sentences. The tension she couldn't explain, and I didn't push hard enough to uncover. We told everyone we had grown apart peacefully. People called it mature, respectful, clean. But lying awake, I felt the weight of every quiet moment we brushed aside. Peace can sometimes be exhaustion disguised as acceptance. That night stretched endlessly. Every tick of the clock sounded like a reminder that something had always been hidden beneath our silence. And as I stared at the dark ceiling, one thought kept circling louder than the rest. Silence never disappears. It waits. The next morning the message followed me like a shadow I couldn't step out of. I tried to start the day normally. Coffee brewing. Sunlight slipping through the curtains. The familiar rhythm of routine. But everything felt slightly off, like the air itself had shifted. My phone sat face down on the table, yet I could feel it there, heavy with unfinished meaning. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe regret. Maybe nostalgia. Maybe loneliness had finally caught up with her. But deep inside, something refused to relax. Urgent was not a word she used lightly, and timing after a full year of silence never happens without a reason. I kept replaying the night before. Her name glowing. My quick reply. The way my chest tightened before I even opened the message. That kind of reaction doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from memory recognizing danger before logic does. Hours passed slowly. Every distraction failed. Emails blurred. Background noise meant nothing. Around noon my phone lit again. A second message, just my name, no punctuation, no explanation, no warmth. The simplicity felt colder than the first text. It wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. Like a hand knocking twice after you pretend not to hear the first time. I stared at it for a long time without replying. A single word can carry weight when it's sent by someone who knows your past. I felt curiosity rising again, mixing with unease. People don't reach back into old lives unless something unresolved is pushing them. Silence has a pattern. First distance, then hesitation, then urgency. By evening the call came. Her name flashing on the screen again felt like déjà vu wrapped in tension. I watched it ring, let it stop. Then it rang again almost immediately, and guilt nudged me toward answering. Her voice sounded fragile, softer than I remembered. Not emotional, just tired. Please, I really need to tell you something. It's important. There was a pause after that sentence that felt heavier than the words themselves. Like she was standing at the edge of something difficult, and couldn't step forward without help. She didn't sound like someone chasing the past. She sounded like someone carrying it. I didn't ask questions. Sometimes tone tells you enough. I agreed to meet the next day, a public place, neutral, safe. When I ended the call, the house felt quieter than usual, but not peaceful. More like the kind of silence that waits before revealing what it has been hiding. I arrived at the cafe earlier than necessary, the kind of early that comes from nerves you don't want to admit. The place was calm, soft music playing, cups clinking, people talking in low voices that blended into the background. I chose a table near the window so I could see the entrance clearly. I kept telling myself this was just a conversation, just closure, nothing emotional left to reopen. But my hands wouldn't stay still. Every time the door moved, my chest tightened for a second before relaxing again. When she finally walked in, I felt the air shift around me. It wasn't dramatic, it was quiet and heavy, like a truth entering the room before words did. She looked thinner, paler, carrying something invisible that weighed on her shoulders. There was no smile, no small talk, no polite warmth. She sat down across from me and didn't even take off her coat. That alone told me this wasn't a reunion. It was a release. Her eyes avoided mine at first, scanning the table like she was rehearsing courage. Then suddenly, almost sharply, she said, "I didn't cheat on you. No hello. No easing into the moment. Just defense." My stomach dropped instantly. People don't deny something unless it's connected to what they're about to confess. The cafe noise faded behind her words. I leaned forward slowly, waiting. She struggled to continue, fingers trembling slightly as they gripped the edge of the table. "I need you to understand something," she whispered. Everything that happened, it wasn't what it looked like. That sentence alone sent a chill through me. My mind began flipping through memories automatically. Arguments that made no sense, distance that came out of nowhere, tension that felt planted instead of natural. She paused again, breathing unevenly, like each word cost effort. Then she said the name. My closest friend. The one who comforted me during the divorce. The one who told me she was acting strange. The one who stood beside me like loyalty itself. Hearing his name in that moment didn't feel real. It felt misplaced, like she had pulled the wrong memory from the wrong story. I almost laughed out of disbelief, but her face stopped me. Guilt doesn't lie. Pain doesn't perform, she explained slowly, voice shaking but steady enough to hurt. Months before our marriage ended, he had inserted himself into her life under the mask of support. He listened to her fears, offered help, gained trust, and then he began pulling strings quietly, asking personal questions, requesting small favors, learning details about our finances, our routines, our private struggles. At the same time, he was feeding me doubts about her behavior, framing her as distant and unstable while pretending concern. I felt my memories rearranging as she spoke. Every unexplained shift in our relationship suddenly had a shadow behind it. Every misunderstanding had a hidden hand guiding it. And sitting there across from her, I realized this meeting wasn't about reopening the past. It was about exposing the person who had been standing inside it the entire time. Once she started speaking, the pieces began falling into place in a way that made my chest feel tight and hollow at the same time. He didn't rush anything. That was the part that hurt the most. It was slow, careful, almost invisible. He positioned himself as someone she could lean on during our stressful months. When I worked late, he called her to check in. When she felt overwhelmed, he told her he understood me better than anyone else. He studied our weak moments like a patient architect, mapping cracks before widening them. He offered to help her manage small financial tasks when she said she felt confused about bills and transfers. It sounded harmless at first. Friendly. Supportive. He asked for temporary access to accounts to set things up properly. She trusted him because I trusted him. That's how manipulation works. It borrows credibility. Soon he knew everything: passwords, spending habits, personal conversations we had in private. He didn't steal loudly. He siphoned quietly. Small amounts that blended into everyday life, so neither of us noticed the shift immediately. But money wasn't his real target. Control was. He began using information to shape our arguments. He would tell me things she said in confidence, twisting them slightly so they sounded cold or suspicious. Then he told her I was losing patience, that I doubted her loyalty. He planted seeds of insecurity on both sides, watering them carefully until distance grew between us without either of us understanding why. Every misunderstanding felt natural because he staged it to look that way. When she realized what was happening and tried to cut communication, that's when the mask dropped. He reminded her of messages he had saved, conversations he framed to look like emotional betrayal. He threatened to expose them to me and others. Shame trapped her. Fear silenced her. She felt cornered inside a story he had rewritten to make her look guilty, even though she was the victim. Instead of confessing something she didn't know how to explain, she withdrew. And I mistook her silence for emotional separation. Listening to her describe it felt like watching someone replay a crime scene I had lived in without recognizing it. Every fight we had suddenly carried his fingerprints. Every moment she seemed distant had been pressure from behind the curtain. And the cruelest part. He stood beside me afterward, pretending sympathy while knowing he had already dismantled my marriage piece by piece. She slid her phone across the table with trembling hands, and for a moment I didn't want to touch it. Proof changes everything. Suspicion can still hide behind denial, but evidence forces your mind to surrender. I picked it up slowly. The first screenshots showed conversations that stretched back months before our divorce. Long threads filled with manipulation disguised as care. He wasn't flirting. He was positioning. Asking personal questions about our finances, our routines, our arguments. Offering help where it wasn't needed. Creating emotional dependence while pretending loyalty to me. As I scrolled, the pattern became clearer and darker. Transfers from our joint account routed through small investment opportunities. He convinced her to try. Every withdrawal timed carefully after he had access. The amounts were subtle at first, too small to trigger alarms, too regular to look suspicious. Then voice notes appeared, his tone calm, persuasive, patient. Coaching her on what to say to me after each staged misunderstanding. Feeding her words designed to provoke distance. At the same time, there were messages he sent me during those same weeks. Warning me she was hiding things, that she seemed unstable, that something felt off. I could see it now, like overlapping timelines colliding into one truth. He wasn't a friend observing our problems. He was manufacturing them. My hands shook as I reached the recordings she had saved. His voice was colder there, stripped of the friendly warmth he showed publicly. He reminded her that he had receipts. Threatened to show edited conversations if she pulled away. Twisted innocent exchanges to look like emotional betrayal. He trapped her inside silence by weaponizing shame. Every time she tried to distance herself, he tightened control. Every time she hesitated to tell me, he fed me more lies so I would emotionally detach first. It was psychological suffocation, slow and deliberate. I felt sick realizing the person who comforted me through my divorce had been the one steering it toward collapse. Every memory shifted under that weight. The nights he sat beside me saying she was drifting. The advice he gave me to let go. The sympathy he offered while already knowing he had dismantled everything. Betrayal isn't always loud or impulsive. Sometimes it's quiet strategy wearing the mask of loyalty. Then she looked at me with tears she had been holding back all day and said the real reason she came. He had found someone new. And he was repeating the same pattern, gaining trust, asking for financial access, isolating her emotionally from people close to her. Watching him do it again crushed whatever fear she had left. Guilt pushed her to finally speak. She wasn't trying to fix the past. She was trying to stop it from destroying another life. The days after that meeting felt unreal. Like walking through a life that no longer matched its own memories. I couldn't confront him immediately. Not because I was afraid, but because now everything required precision. Betrayal backed by proof becomes a legal matter, not just emotional pain. I gathered every file she sent, every screenshot, every transfer record, every audio clip. I printed them, labeled them, studied timelines the way detectives study patterns. Dates aligned perfectly with the slow collapse of my marriage. Every argument we had now looked rehearsed. Every misunderstanding suddenly had a hidden script behind it. That realization was heavier than anger. It was clarity arriving too late. I contacted a financial advisor first, quietly. He traced the small withdrawals that had slipped past us. They weren't random. They followed a pattern of access and timing. Then I spoke to a lawyer. Not to seek revenge, but to protect what was left and prevent further damage. Manipulators count on silence and disbelief. Evidence breaks both. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became how deeply he had embedded himself in our lives without raising alarms. He didn't just take money. He controlled narratives. He influenced emotions. He redirected trust. I replayed old conversations with him in my mind and heard new meanings in every word. The way he always positioned himself as the voice of reason. The way he framed her behavior to me as instability. The way he encouraged distance while pretending to support reconciliation. I realized something painful. Manipulators don't push loudly. They guide quietly until you believe their version is your own thought. That kind of betrayal is psychological, not just personal. Anger came in waves, but it slowly transformed into awareness. I stopped asking how I didn't see it. The truth was simple. Predators study human emotion better than honest people do. They choose moments of vulnerability. They exploit trust because trust opens doors faster than force ever could. And shame keeps victims silent because they fear blame more than pain. Healing didn't start with forgiveness. It started with understanding. Understanding that deception can wear kindness. That loyalty can be faked perfectly. That intuition ignored becomes hindsight regret. I learned to look at silence differently. Not as distance, but sometimes as fear. And I learned that protecting your peace requires boundaries, even with the people you love most. Rebuilding didn't happen in one big emotional breakthrough. It happened quietly, day by day, in moments that looked ordinary from the outside, but felt heavy inside. I had to relearn how to trust my own judgment before I could trust anything else. For months after the truth surfaced, every memory still carried confusion. I would think about our marriage and feel anger, then sadness, then clarity all in the same breath. It was like my mind had to reorganize years of belief. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about seeing the past correctly without letting it control the present. I started creating boundaries where I once had blind faith. I became more aware of patterns, tone shifts, emotional inconsistencies. Not paranoid, just awake. Awareness is not bitterness. It's protection built from experience. I learned to sit with silence instead of running from it. Silence had once been the space where manipulation grew between us because neither of us questioned it. Now silence became reflection, not avoidance. I understood how easily people can insert influence into relationships when communication weakens. That realization alone changed the way I approached every connection afterward. My ex and I spoke a few more times after that first meeting, not to revive anything, but to untangle what remained emotionally. Truth softened resentment. Once the manipulation was exposed, I stopped seeing her distance as rejection and started seeing it as fear she didn't know how to explain. That perspective didn't erase pain, but it replaced blame with understanding, and understanding brings peace in a way anger never can. We didn't walk back into love, but we walked out of confusion together. Closure built on honesty feels lighter than relationships built on illusion. What surprised me most was how strength grows after betrayal if you allow it to teach instead of destroy. I became more patient with myself, more protective of my emotional space. I stopped measuring my worth by what collapsed and started valuing what survived. On Betrayal Uncovered, we talk about this often. Betrayal doesn't just break hearts, it exposes hidden truths that force growth. It's painful, but it sharpens you. It teaches you to listen to instincts, to question sudden distance, to recognize when something feels staged instead of natural. Slowly, life stopped feeling like a loss and started feeling like a reset. The emptiness I feared became room for clarity. I wasn't abandoned by love. I was rescued from deception I couldn't see. And once that thought settled in, peace finally felt real. Life after betrayal is strange. At first, it feels empty, like a house stripped of furniture you didn't even know you valued until it's gone. I walked through those first weeks carefully, learning to breathe in spaces that used to feel crowded with deceit. Every small decision carried weight, because I knew now how fragile trust could be when someone else manipulates it quietly. I stopped assuming good intentions in everyone automatically and began observing patterns instead of personalities. That kind of awareness isn't cold. It's survival. Betrayal teaches you that. I learned to rebuild slowly, starting with myself. I reinstated routines I had abandoned, things I had taken for granted when I was distracted by the hidden chaos around me. I took walks alone to think. I journaled nights of emotion that had nowhere to go. I reminded myself that survival isn't just about enduring pain. It's about reclaiming your own story from people who tried to rewrite it. Every decision, every boundary, every refusal to let someone manipulate my emotions became a small victory. Life after betrayal is a constant exercise in vigilance and self-respect. And it isn't just about guarding yourself. It's about understanding human nature more clearly. I began seeing the signs I had missed in the past. Tiny manipulations disguised as kindness, subtle pressures disguised as concern. Questions that weren't about curiosity but control. My trust didn't vanish, but it became selective, informed, protective. I stopped believing that loving someone automatically ensures honesty. Love is not a shield, awareness is. The clarity I gained was liberating, and it gave me courage I didn't know I had. I also learned to let go of the weight of blame. My ex-wife didn't deserve the anger I had once carried toward her. She was trapped, manipulated, and silenced. I didn't reunite with her, and I didn't need to. What we rebuilt was understanding, and that understanding brought peace. A peace that wasn't empty but charged with lessons learned, resilience built, and strength regained. I walked away stronger, because the betrayal forced me to confront the truth, not just about others, but about myself, my instincts, my trust, my boundaries. The most important lesson I carry now is this. Losing people who were never truly for you is not a loss. It is delayed protection. Betrayal isn't a reflection of your failure. It's a reflection of someone else's character. Survival and clarity carry more power than resentment ever could. On Betrayal Uncovered, we share stories like this not just for suspense or shock, but because someone listening right now may be in the same silent confusion I once lived in. Silence is often a warning that the truth is waiting to be uncovered. Now, when I walk through life, I notice patterns before they form problems. I listen before I judge. I observe before I trust blindly. Betrayal left scars, yes, but it also left me wiser, stronger, and more capable of protecting my peace. I no longer fear loneliness because I understand that being alone with your clarity is far better than being surrounded by deception. If this story moved you, if it made your heart race or your mind think twice about trust, then don't stay silent. Share it. Comment below. Someone else may be living in confusion, believing the pain is theirs alone, when it is really someone else's deception. Your voice could help them see the truth before it's too late. On Betrayal Uncovered, every story has a lesson. And this one proves that awareness and courage can turn even the deepest betrayal into the foundation of strength.